Number 8. Alyssa Ann Zinger. An accused predator from Tampa, Florida, was arrested twice over a 6-month period for allegedly targeting young victims online by posing as a teenage girl. 23-year-old Alyssa Ann Zinger first made news headlines in November 2023 when she was accused of exchanging inappropriate content with several individuals and engaging in illicit acts with one victim. Authorities learned of the alleged crimes after the victim confided in their teacher, who contacted law enforcement. Zinger was charged with 7 crimes, including 2 counts of lewd and lascivious battery, and was released while awaiting the outcome of her case. At the time, police said that they believed there were more victims. In April 2024, Zinger was charged with 7 additional counts after she was caught shoplifting with one of her victims. She allegedly claimed she was born in 2009, and when the police found a record of someone with the same name who was born in 2001, she claimed it was her half-sister, who just happens to have the same exact name. Zinger's employer confirmed that she was an adult and her case is ongoing. For now, she remains behind bars at the Hillsborough County Jail while awaiting her next court date. Number 7. Michael Nelson. While driving her son to school one day in early 2020, a Colorado woman named Stephanie Troyer noticed an erratic driver ahead of her on an interstate in Jefferson County. As she tried to pass him, he flashed a gold badge, giving off the impression that he was a member of law enforcement. Troyer pulled over, but the situation seemed suspicious, so her son recorded the interaction. When the man failed to produce an ID despite being asked several times, Troyer drove away. She showed the video to law enforcement, who were able to confirm that the man was not a real police officer. Authorities subsequently identified the suspect as 50-year-old Michael Nelson, who one officer recalled pulling over months earlier. During the traffic stop, the officer had noticed a fake Interpol badge, which Nelson claimed belonged to one of his kids. Shortly after Nelson's arrest for impersonating law enforcement and false imprisonment, news channel Fox 31's Problem Solvers team discovered a photo that appeared to show Nelson wearing a Colorado Parks and Wildlife vest. A CPW spokesperson confirmed that Nelson had never worked for the agency and described the uniform as fabricated. The journalists also found photos of Nelson wearing clothing bearing Homeland Security, ATF, and ICE emblems. Since then, updates on the case have not been forthcoming, leaving the outcome unclear. Number 6. Hargobind Harvey Tahil Ramani. Since 2013, hundreds of entertainment industry freelancers and social media influencers have been duped by the so-called Hollywood con queen, who impersonated some of the biggest female names in show business. The con artist lured photographers, stunt persons, and other victims with promising offers of high-paying work with the potential to make their career. Unaware they were being catfished, victims shelled out big bucks for trips to Indonesia and other locations that the scammer, Hargobind Harvey Tahil Ramani, promised would be reimbursed. Once the target arrived in a different country, they would either carry out the work they were hired to do based on the promise that they would eventually get paid, or they would be led through a series of confusing steps or into a predicament that ultimately led to them losing more money, which Tahil Ramani got his hands on. A lot of people wonder how someone could fall for such a far-fetched ruse, but in Hollywood, it's normal to do business over the phone, or for freelancers to be compensated for their costs after working on a project. Tahil Ramani preyed on the desire of young, ambitious people to make it big in their chosen field and their fear of missing out on a major opportunity. In 2020, the FBI arrested Tahil Ramani in the United Kingdom, where he remains in custody while fighting extradition to the US. He profited from his scams to the tune of $1.5 million, leading to speculation that he had additional motives for conning dozens of victims over the years. An attempt to answer this question is made in the Apple Plus documentary Hollywood Con Queen, which premiered in May of 2024, but the world is still waiting for a direct answer from Tahil Ramani. Number 5. Kendra Gale Licari. For nearly a 2-year period starting in 2021, a young Michigan woman and her boyfriend were tormented with nasty, threatening, and degrading messages from a cyberbully posing as multiple people. A lot of the correspondence was disguised to look like it was coming from the couple's friends, but it wasn't. It was all orchestrated by one person and one person only, the woman's mother, 42-year-old Kendra Gale Licari. Throughout the seemingly endless torment, Licari also fulfilled a supportive role in her daughter's life, even going with the young woman to the police to report the harassment. Investigators eventually traced the crimes to Licari, despite her efforts to conceal the source of the messages. In 2022, she was charged with 2 counts of stalking, 2 counts of using a computer to commit a crime, and 1 count of obstruction of justice. Licari pleaded guilty to 2 counts of stalking and was sentenced to 19 months to 5 years in prison. Isabella County prosecutor David Barberi described the case as one of the most confusing and complicated he has ever dealt with in his career. While Licari's daughter urged the court for leniency, the family of the other victim, Owen McKenney, urged the judge to throw the book at her. In a victim impact statement, Owen's mother, Jill, expressed her dismay at Licari's actions, wondering out loud how a mother could do what she did, especially for so long. She also expressed her concerns about the long-term impact on her son's mental health and questioned the same thing everyone else wants to know: Licari's motive. Unfortunately, disclosing her motive was not part of the plea deal that Licari took. Barberi theorized that she suffered from what he described as a cyber Munchausen syndrome, while others have speculated that it started when Licari became jealous of her daughter's boyfriend and no longer felt needed. Number 4. Belle Gibson. In 2013, Australian wellness influencer Belle Gibson convinced her followers that she had survived terminal brain cancer 4 years earlier through alternative medicine and a nutritious diet. She claimed that in 2009, her doctor had given her just 6 weeks to live, only to defy the odds in ways that are completely unheard of in modern medicine. Piggybacking off her newfound fame, Gibson launched a popular healthy living app called The Whole Pantry. It was rated as Australia's top food and drink app that year and helped lead to a deal with Lantern Books to publish Gibson's cookbook. Around the same time, Gibson started working with Apple to create an Apple Watch-friendly version of the Whole Pantry app. By early 2015, her brand's sales had exceeded $1 million, and it seemed like profits were on track to continue growing. Gibson's followers were inspired by her continued plans to expand her brand, especially after she claimed that her cancer had returned and spread to her blood, spleen, brain, uterus, and liver. Her story began to fall apart in early 2015 when several charities that she had promised large donations to said they hadn't received any money. It sparked a series of events that eventually led to speculation that Gibson was lying about a multitude of things, including having cancer. Shortly after the allegations began to surface, Gibson came clean during an interview with Australia Women's Weekly. She admitted that none of the cancer stories were true and said that she hoped people would understand she was human, but she didn't explicitly apologize. During another interview with 60 Minutes, Gibson made remarks that caused people to question who she even was or how old she was. She admitted to changing her name several times and refused to reveal her age. Gibson lost her deal with Apple, her app was shut down, her wellness brand floundered, and she was fined $410,000 for failing to fulfill her promised donations to charity. But the Australian government has been unable to recoup any of the money, and Gibson's current whereabouts are unclear, as she remains conspicuously absent from social media. Number 3. Mark Roy Anderson. Starting in mid-2020, a man later identified as Mark Roy Anderson persuaded unsuspecting members of the public to invest in his cannabis farm in Southern California. He took money from people for nearly 3 years, totaling over $18 million. But Anderson's investors became suspicious when they failed to see any promised returns, and his suppliers also became suspicious when they never received payment. The case fell under the scrutiny of FBI agents who quickly uncovered Anderson's operation as a complete scam. Anderson was no stranger to law enforcement. In fact, he's a career scammer who had just been released from federal prison and who was on house arrest when he started the cannabis scheme. In the past, Anderson had pilfered money from investors based on fake promises to restore historic buildings, for properties he didn't actually own, and for projects and ventures that never came to fruition, including a $9 million oil scam. He pulled off the cannabis scheme right from home, using stock images and websites created with GoDaddy, and used the profits to buy 15 luxury cars and a house in Beverly Hills. Anderson also used aliases and pretended to be younger than he is in order to prevent his victims from finding out about his past scams. But these aliases were somewhat similar to his real name, leading him to reassure any potentially suspicious victims that he was not to be confused with the career scammer Mark Roy Anderson, even though that's exactly who he was. In April 2024, the 69-year-old pleaded guilty to 2 counts of wire fraud. He's currently awaiting sentencing and faces up to 20 years in federal prison on each charge. Number 2. Aaron/Perrin Clark. In 2021, Aaron Clark founded the Colorado-based nonprofit Justice Reskill, which claimed to help convicted felons learn job skills and land employment. The organization quickly became recognized for its progressive values and its work towards social justice. It brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of grants from donors and additional funds from investors. Within months, however, employees complained to the State Department of Labor about not being paid, and a labor agency sued Clark for non-payment. Clark hired a lawyer to help settle the disputes, then he failed to pay her and disappeared amid several ongoing civil lawsuits and an expose by the Denver Post. His exact whereabouts are unclear, and it's estimated that he ran off with as much as $500,000 that was meant for Justice Reskill, which has since collapsed and no longer exists. Clark's history of theft and fraud dates back to 2007, when he and his then-wife Rachel pleaded no contest to 31 charges, including embezzlement, theft, and check forging for allegedly stealing from their employer in California. At the time, Clark was living under his given first name, Perrin, which he changed to Aaron in 2018. The couple was also accused in numerous other scams, and in 2013, Clark pleaded no contest to grand theft for cheating renters out of money for a room they were never given the keys to. During a phone interview with 5280 magazine's Chris Walker in early 2024, Clark blamed these and other past wrongdoings on his lack of financial savvy and his ego, which got in the way of his willingness to hire experts who knew what they were doing. But many people aren't buying the explanation and are seeing what appears to be a deliberate pattern of stealing money and disappearing. Whether Clark repairs his image or whether he's even given that opportunity remain to be seen. We have another great video lined up right after number 1. If you need more of a daily world list dosage, then be sure to stay tuned if you haven't seen that one yet. Number 1. Stephen Morgan Byers. In early 2024, journalists from the Albuquerque-based news station KOAT began investigating claims of a home improvement scam being carried out by a man named Stephen Morgan Byers. The network aired an expose revealing its findings, which include decades worth of fraud, theft, and larceny allegations and convictions in multiple states. Byers was first arrested for scamming people in the 1980s. He was ordered to pay nearly $20,000 back to 15 victims throughout New Mexico. In 1992, Byers escaped from prison. Following his capture, he received a 25-year prison sentence for his latest batch of scams and his escape. At the time, then District Attorney Bob Schwartz said that he did not believe Byers was capable of being rehabilitated, and that he believed a career fraudster would only continue swindling unsuspecting civilians of their hard-earned money. After regaining his freedom, Byers went to Nevada where, not surprisingly, he was convicted of scamming people. He was sentenced to 10 years to life and was pardoned in 2017 after claiming that he had multiple personalities, which compelled him to commit his crimes. Byers wasn't completely off the hook, however. As part of his sentence, he would remain on lifetime parole, which meant that if he wanted to move to another state, he would need permission. Shortly after his release from prison, his supervision was transferred to New Mexico, but he skipped out on parole. New Mexico authorities notified Nevada officials of the parole violation, and the state issued a warrant for Byers' arrest. When KOAT exposed Byers' latest scams, several people had come forward claiming to be victims, including 3 women who were bilked out of anywhere from $5,000 to $55,000. The women were unaware of Byers' criminal history, and at least one of the victims was shown seemingly legitimate paperwork proving that he was a certified contractor, but he failed to show up as scheduled to perform the promised work. Shortly after the story aired in February 2024, Bernalillo County Sheriff's deputies tracked Byers using a license plate reader and arrested him on 6 outstanding warrants out of New Mexico and Nevada. He now faces charges of being an out-of-state fugitive and operating as an unlicensed contractor. Byers is also accused of attempting to escape custody after his arrest by climbing through a ceiling at a local hospital where he had been taken by law enforcement. He also faces a drug charge for allegedly having 42 fentanyl pills in his possession at the time of his arrest.
Number 9. The Dale. The 1970s were a strange time, with civil rights rallies, environmental movements, presidential scandals, and fear of nuclear war. Most people were just trying to get through the days, but the average consumer was missing something. And Liz Carmichael knew just what they needed. The fuel crisis of 1974 led to a consumer need for more energy-efficient vehicle options. Enter the Dale, a cheap, efficient, stylish three-wheeled car. Sounds too good to be true? Well, you're absolutely right, it was a giant hoax. After receiving $30 million investment dollars, close to $200 million today, Carmichael was planning on revolutionizing the vehicle industry. Little did investors know Carmichael had an interesting past. She was born as Jerry Dean Michael, who just so happened to be on the run from feds for charges relating to counterfeiting. Liz was a tried and true con artist that got national attention for her biggest con yet. She got the 20th Century Motor Car Company involved and quickly began advertising. Some of the taglines called it the most exciting new car of this century, the first space-aged automobile, even describing it as designed and built like it was ready to be driven to the moon. These were some pretty far-out claims for an equally far-out looking vehicle. Liz claimed that they would sell over 200,000 models, but here's the catch you've been waiting for. They only ever made one prototype. The neon yellow car was full of motorcycle parts with no steering wheel mechanism, gas pedals, or suitable motor. The only motor in it came from a lawnmower. The futuristic Dale couldn't even go 30 miles an hour, let alone drive to the moon. It was a car sold on a dream, but once the nightmarish truth got out, millions of investor dollars were lost, and Carmichael was sent to prison. Number 8. Real-life war dogs. Did you know the hit film War Dogs was based on a true story? Ephraim Diavoli was 19 years old while owning the AEY Inc. arms company. At the age of 23, David Mordecai Pacquiao joined the company, and by 2006 they had amassed over 149 contracts. A year later, the pair landed a massive deal with the US government. For $300 million, AYE was to supply the Afghan army with millions of AK-47 rounds along with rockets and other heavy artillery. According to the contract with the US, Pacquiao and Diavoli were supposed to get the weaponry from Albania, but they actually got it from China, which was a direct violation of the original agreement. It was especially bad because the US bans all Chinese ammunition. The men actively covered up the fact that the rounds were created in China by removing the Chinese markings on all of the gun crates. After discovering the scam, the US did not take the axe lightly and charged the two with fraud. Diavoli was sent to prison for 4 years on account of conspiracy to defraud the United States, and Pacquiao was given 7 months of house arrest. Number 7. Fire Festival. In 2007, the ultimate party for the ultra-rich and celebrity elite was advertised, with tickets costing up to $100,000 a piece and promotions from well-known socialites like Kendall Jenner and Hailey Baldwin. The Fire Festival was supposed to be the party of the century. Guests were promised luxury accommodations with gourmet meals, celebrity interactions, and a true island getaway. Over 5,000 people bought tickets, racking up over $26 million in sales. Once arriving for the exciting experience in the Bahamas, festival-goers were shocked at what awaited them. Cheese sandwiches in to-go boxes, small tents with soaking wet mattresses and outhouses, hardly the luxury experience people were hoping for. High-profile artists were on the docket to perform, but many, like Blink-182, pulled out shortly before due to how sketchy the event seemed. The man behind it all was Billy McFarland. For his crimes against partiers, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison and had to give back the $26 million. Hulu and Netflix have both published documentaries about the massive festival scam, and it's hard to believe the festival's organizers thought they could just whip up a luxury experience in a few months when it should have taken over a year. Number 6. COVID relief money scam. 2020 was really a year for the history books. COVID-19 came out of nowhere and hit everyone off guard, ruining plans and forcing us to stay indoors. No one could have predicted or successfully prepared for it. It was in this year that scammers took advantage of the chaos and fear surrounding the virus and stole over $4.2 billion from individuals across the country. Comparatively, over the course of 2017 and all the way through 2019, a total of $7.6 billion was taken from unsuspecting victims. The news of 2020's record was released in the Internet Crime Report from the FBI this March. It's estimated that the $4.2 billion figure is just a rough estimate, since it's highly likely that many of the people that got scammed were too embarrassed to admit what happened. A Facebook group created for scam victims with over 700 members did a survey that showed almost 75% of people were too ashamed to file a report. The scammers had multiple methods of getting what they wanted. Many would make fake profiles on social media sites like Facebook and Instagram, some even going on dating sites or apps for games. Using these personas, they would innocently start a conversation with their mark with a pre-written script, meticulously crafted to trick gullible victims. After forming some kind of connection, the scammer would make up an excuse for why they needed money. Whether it was issues after losing their job during COVID or fraudulent medical problems, the people they were targeting felt bad for their new friend and would often send money to help. In California, 69,000 people fell for these tricks. It's unfortunate that someone would take advantage of people during such a vulnerable time, and it's even more sad that they were so successful in doing so. Just remember, the next time someone you don't know reaches out to you on social sites, don't become a victim. Did you ever get a message on Facebook from someone trying to scam you? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Scott Rothstein. Everyone has heard of or at least joked about those mega rich businessmen who fly exclusively on private jets to their 16th vacation home on a private island off the coast of France. Well, Scott Rothstein was one of those men, and he got his money by scamming others in the wealthy elite. Rothstein was a lawyer, as well as a shareholder and the CEO of the Rothstein Rosenfeld Alder law firm. In 2009, it was discovered that he, along with some of the other higher-ups in the firm, were guilty of involvement in a $1.2 billion Ponzi scheme. In case you don't know, a Ponzi scheme is a type of scam that tricks investors into putting money into a project. Little do they know their money isn't going to go to the intended project, but instead it's going into the pockets of early investors. While the early investors think the money is coming from the project, it's actually coming from the new funds, and the cycle just keeps on repeating. Eventually, the FBI caught on to what Rothstein was doing, and they issued a search warrant for the law firm's offices in Fort Lauderdale during November of 2009. Spooked by the feds, Rothstein fled to Casablanca with $16 million. Talk about a lavish getaway. He was either overcome with guilt or too scared of what the police might do to him that he wrote a suicide message to his partners. Thankfully, they were able to talk him out of the deed, and justice was served. Finally, on June 9th of 2010, Scott received his prison sentence of 50 years in prison. It just goes to show that some mega-rich people will get their hands dirty for money. Number 4. James Paul Lewis Jr. In 2004, a 57-year-old California man by the name of James Paul Lewis Jr. scammed investors out of $814 million. Putting on a front as an investment advisor, James would trick his clients into investing in certain businesses, while really he was just taking their money in an elaborate Ponzi scheme. He owned a large investment firm called the Orange County Firm Financial Advisory Consultants that was inevitably shut down due to his crimes. Lewis had been scamming his trusting clients for over 20 years, with over 5,200 in his criminal career. It wasn't until December 22nd of 2004 that the FBI raided his office, only to find $2.3 out of the $814 million he was supposed to have on hand for his clients, many of whom were elderly and needed the money to get through their final years of life. The FBI found that Lewis had sent some of the money overseas and traded it into foreign currency while also using it to buy luxury cars, fancy homes, and more. For his crimes, U.S. District Judge Cormac Carney sentenced Lewis to serve a maximum sentence possible of 30 years and ordered him to pay back $156 million in restitution. To this day, Lewis serves his prison sentence, but only 11 of that $156 million has been recovered. Number 3. Credit card scams. Scammers have been tricking people for years and know exactly how to get what they want. Ever since credit cards first rolled out decades ago, hackers and scammers have found ways to make money off of innocent victims. Collectively, billions of dollars have been stolen. But how do they do it, you might ask? How could some people be so gullible and just give their credit card information out to strangers. Well, they use multiple methods to trick cardholders. Many times it starts with a simple phone call. You've probably gotten one or maybe 1,000 calls asking about your car's extended warranty, how you owe money to the IRS, and there's a warrant out for your arrest, or maybe there's reduced insurance rates in your area. You probably hang up as soon as you hear that robotic voice, but some people, most often older people and less technologically savvy adults, well, they keep listening. These types of scams are known as phishing schemes and can lead to money being stolen off of cards or even entirely new credit cards being opened in the target's name. This can often lead down a slippery slope to identity theft. It's easier than you think to become a victim of a credit card scam. Scammers use multiple avenues to try and take your money, whether it be through phone calls, emails, social media, and more. You should always be careful with your credit card information. Number 2. Gift cards. Gift cards are the unspoken favorite Christmas and birthday present that everyone wants because after getting one, you can buy whatever you want with it. And so can scammers. They want them too. The only difference is they want you to pay for them. If you've ever worked a retail job at a store that sells these coveted cards, then you probably know where we're going with this. In 2020, the Better Business Bureau reported almost $3 million stolen due to gift card scams. There's an average of $700 out of pocket of each victim. This number is probably much higher since less than 10% of those tricked filed an incident report. Similar to the credit card schemes, perpetrators often call their victims saying that they're going to be arrested immediately unless a certain amount of money is given on a Visa gift card, or that they've won the lottery but must pay a certain amount before receiving the jackpot. They then ask for the numbers on the back of the card and make their getaway without a trace. Sadly, most gift cards can't be returned once they're purchased, so there's almost no way for victims to get their money back after realizing they've been tricked. Sadly, the elderly are the ones most commonly fooled, with over 66% of those being women. It's been found that the most bought gift cards in these scams include ones for Google Play, Target, Amazon, eBay, and iTunes. In Canada, one of the top gift cards used for theft is a Steam card, mainly used for online gaming. The issue has gotten so bad that retail employees are now trained to recognize the signs of a gift card scam, even though it's very difficult to tell someone they've been tricked once they've convinced themselves otherwise. So next time you buy a gift card for someone else, ask yourself if you can really trust that person. Number 1. Reed Sletkin. The early 2000s seemed to be a massively popular time for Ponzi schemes, one of which conducted by a man known as Reed E. Slatkin, who stole over $500 million from investors. He claimed the only reason he committed the crimes was because he was under threat. Slatkin was a member of the famed Church of Scientology, who he said were threatening him to trick investors so the church could profit, but the church adamantly denied such claims. It's no secret, though, that the church was a major part of Slatkin's life. He was converted at an early age during a rocky period in his life right after the death of his father. Practically growing up in the church, it wouldn't be a surprise if his claims of harassment for donations turned out to be true. The church was never seen at fault, though, since there was no evidence of involvement. As part of a sentencing deal, Slatkin assisted investors in taking down and uncovering the depths of the scheme. But Judge Morrow said his help was somewhat sketchy, since he would often wait until hints of evidence were found before admitting anything, indicating that there could be more he was hiding. Eventually, he was given a 14-year prison sentence. One of his victims, John Poitras, said this sentence was an absolute insult to the victims, since he and many of his friends lost life savings in the scam. Along with the multiple-year sentence, Slatkin was ordered to pay back $240 million to his victims.
Thanks for watching. Would you rather plunge into decades of debt after falling for a scam, or catch a legal case after unknowingly helping a scammer with what you believed was legitimate work? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.